So Hugh Fowles and SMK are now coming to talk to you from the corporate, if you like, perspective. So businesses and a very straight business focus on, you know, what this future of work, this future technology-enabled environment is going to look at. And I'm going to start by asking both of you the same question that I threw to the first panellists, is what do you think is the most significant change that employers and managers need to start to think about to leverage technology and create that business of the future? I won't mention the war, but that race for talent. Over to you. Who would like to start?
I'll start. So hi, everybody. I'm SMK. Thanks for having me here today. I'll start with the fact that I have been a recruiter for probably 20 years, mainly in Silicon Valley. So recently moved here to Australia about 3 years ago, I say for the good part. I have worked with companies like Twitter. I was the head of recruiting at Twitter in San Francisco and Dropbox, and built many, many teams globally. And I arrived here in Australia and really felt how many people are actually here. As I started to recruit for candidates specifically for startups and technology companies, I did a little look around to see how many software engineers actually are in Australia. And that number was 30,000 people. And for me, coming from the US, I was shocked with how few people were actually software engineers. And the fact that that is the number one job that we're going to need for the 17,000 startups, and that number is growing by 5% every year, we are certainly going to need to think about leaning heavily on what you've both said, education. And not just education early in the schools. STEM, of course, is important, and I know education, that talk is old as time, but thinking about upskilling. So there's an amazing company here in Australia, Cloud Guru, and what they do is they're upskilling people to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of languages in software engineering. So I think what we're going to have to do is really encourage employees to think about other ways to expand their careers in order to meet the demand and the need moving forward.
Well said, SMK. Hello, everyone. I'm Hugh. I'm General Manager of Software Development at Car Sales. And just to follow on from what SMK has said there, and yes, I won't use the war term. I'll stick with race. But what's interesting, I think, is if I want to go to the Olympics and be a runner, there's a whole bunch of prerequisites that I have to meet in order to join that race. And I think we do ourselves a complete disservice by having all these pre-existing assumptions about what a software developer needs to have in order to get into our building and come work for us. And I think we're trying to change some of the thinking around that. And yeah, it comes back to that idea of diversity, inclusion, belonging. I think they're all important sort of terms, but what we're really trying to do at work is say to folks, I get really annoyed when one of the teams comes and says, we need a senior developer with 5 years of experience because we really got to hit the ground running. And I kind of ask why, because we're going to give them a job and then they'll want to be a principal developer in 2 years and someone else will offer them a gig, probably Atlassian, and they'll be gone. And we'll be back having this conversation again. So what are we doing to broaden the rules of joining the race? What are we doing to really encourage our recruiters, our people and culture teams, our hiring managers to think about broadening the funnel from which you can pick more people. And we keep really hammering home this idea of go for mindset over skill set. You can teach people how to be a software developer. It's allegedly, and it's easy for me to say because I've never been one, not that hard. It really isn't. I know that sounds quite hypocritical. There's a running gag at work because I am an architect, but I am a building architect, not a software architect. And so a number of our exec at Car Sales hired me under false pretenses. But I think that in and of itself is an example of they didn't bring me in to put the ones and zeros together. They brought me in to create a culture where we can create and make great software. And we need a huge range of opinions and diversity in order to really do that, because I can't remember who said it on the call when we caught up at the briefing, to sort of say you want people within your company who are your consumers. You know, you want bring those people in to help make and solve the problems for your consumer. And I think that's what we're really trying to do at Car Sales.
And so you've got this real reputation for being tech savvy and really bringing in innovation into your industry. If you think of some of the success stories that you've got buzzing around at the moment, what sorts of things are you hearing from them about how they want to stay ahead of the curve? What do they want from you as individuals?
It's a great question. I'll actually flip it and say, what do we want them to stop doing? Because they want to do it all now. And so every week someone comes back from a different conference and says, Internet of Things, Web3, AI, ML, right? And we have to say, yep, that's amazing. But they're all tools. And how are we going to apply those tools to solve the problems for our customer? And I think that's what we really are trying to think about. It's actually, there's like 9 million apps in the world. We create, I think I read the other day, 500 billion gigs of data every day. How do you get through all that noise and find the signals that matter to your business? And if you can get people who think about and constantly worry about their customer and not worry about, like, all these things are going to be important to us, but we don't have to apply them all tomorrow.
Have you got a favourite at work?
What, person or technology?
Person. For those, I always have a favourite. My management teams always know who it is.
I don't play favourites, Susan. Do I have a favourite? I definitely think there are a small group within the business that I will constantly keep going back to for advice. Absolutely.
And what is it about them that really appeals?
It comes back to that idea of thinking about their customer, and being open to being challenged on the way we do things today, and are really looking for better ways of doing stuff tomorrow. Yeah.
Right. So I'm now going to flip across to this side. And so with that fabulous perspective you bring in, and also that experience of coming into Australia and seeing Australia and going, whoa, this wasn't quite what I was expecting. When you look at those sorts of attributes, what would you change about us? What should we be growing? What should we, at our level, be thinking about moving now?
I moved here because I saw enormous opportunity and potential, specifically with startups. I think the government is incredibly supportive of the startup space. There's lots of grant money floating around, amazing accelerator programs. And so I think the barrier to entry here is pretty good as far as like wanting to start a startup. I think where we fall over a little bit is in the talent space, which is why I focus my whole business pathment on bringing in practices like the gold standard practice of recruitment to a lot of these startups. And we work with stealth to IPO companies. And it's always very interesting to me for a startup that has the opportunity to do things differently, how much they want to do things the same. Mm-hmm. And I oftentimes love to challenge a founder and say, well, why do you want to do it this way? Like, why are you leaning on this patriarchal management style or this age-old interview process that we've all been using forever and ever? Like, we have an opportunity in this moment to change things. Did you know that matriarchal leadership style was an option for you? Like, did you know that, like, maybe we don't have to have 10 people interview this person to get through a process? Like, there's so many different ways that we could be doing things, and I love the fact that people here are open to that and willing to make changes, and I think that's a real tribute to Australia as a whole, is that because there aren't that many people here, you have to be incredibly nimble and you have to switch and you have to do things faster and better. It's amazing to see how many unicorns are here in Australia that are competitive with the UK and China and with the US. So I think that there are so many amazing things, but we have to keep challenging each other to go, we can do things differently. We can learn from what's happened in the US and the UK and in China and how people are doing things, and we can do things differently.
What would we do differently and how?
Well, I mean, some of the things I would say right off the bat with some of the companies I work with is to think about maybe the fact that we don't have to have certain types of machine learning engineers right away, or look for somebody with 5+ years of experience with Rust, because Rust wasn't a language 5 years ago. You know, I think that we can be a little bit more flexible. And I think that we can look to other places. And a tribute is, you know, I have a few companies that maybe have struggled to find great talent here, and they need that talent now. And so we have had to look overseas for that talent. But the fact that I've watched these teams merge those overseas teams so seamlessly is really incredible. And I think that that's something we can definitely do. I'm not saying we should move jobs overseas, but it's there as an option now more than ever before because of this, you know, work from home opportunity that we now have in front of us.
And so, Hugh, do you see that played out in your organisation or in peer companies about how they are going about growing the company, how they're going about setting up the workplace?
Yes. Yes is the answer.
I asked a very closed question, didn't I? Bad mistake.
Moving on. No. Yeah, I think we are. We definitely are. We're seeing this whole idea of, and I keep coming back to that point before about looking for diverse means of bringing great people into our organisation to set it up for now and for tomorrow. We're growing at a fairly rapid rate. We're trying to sort of take, I suppose, the special sauce that we've done here, like most people know car sales, and know that we help people buy and sell vehicles. We are a big fish in a small pond. How do we take that growth and apply it to other markets overseas? And I think, again, it's a case of saying, right, let's go and find some subject matter experts in those other markets. Here's what's worked here, what would work in your market. We defer to your local expertise to understand how to apply what we've decided is the solution here to your solution over there. And that's how we're looking to grow the business at the moment.
If you look at either of you, at the pockets of perhaps undeveloped talent we might have out there, how do we harness that? So from a corporation perspective, what are the avenues you would like to get those people job ready for you? And from that recruitment perspective, how do you want employers looking at them to bring them in?
I'll start from a business perspective. I think we are really trying to double down on the programs to encourage women, to encourage neurodiversity, to encourage people from other industries, from various age groups to come and work with us. And I personally really want to see us double down on that. I don't think we do it enough. And I think it will set us up for success because we'll be seen as someone who's really actively working in that space. I know Cam McIntyre, our CEO, is a huge advocate for the digital program that we've got running at the moment, which is looking to bring folks from other industries into our industry, which is amazing. There are other businesses out there that are starting to crop up where they're focusing on return service people coming back, you know, from overseas and redeploying their skills into software development. I think all these kind of programs that specifically target different groups to sort of say, you know, I think we alluded to it before, you know, going into schools. There are other organisations that do a great job of, you know, running like programs to bring, you know, teenage girls in to do work experience in tech organisations, and I think they're absolutely fantastic because it just removes that sort of stigma that this is a boys' club. I think all those kind of things are hugely important, and I think more of those things we do will set us up for success. I think the other thing too is, I know that STEM is really important, but the future of work is going to be about creativity. It's not going to be about STEM, because the AI and the ML aspects of the world will start taking over these different kinds of roles for us. I know you've all sort of probably read and thought about that, but I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I don't particularly care if she can read and write at the moment, because she will. Like, it will happen. And that's not to say I don't encourage her to do her homework, but I'm more interested in the pictures she's drawing or the stories she's telling or the lies she is telling. Because that, to me, is that creative side of things, which is going to hold her in incredibly good stead when she graduates from school and thinks about what she wants to do with her career.
Brilliant. I can probably tell you what her career path will look like. And from your perspective, also on this, I'd like also both of you to add in, what tech should we be throwing at people to make it accessible, to get them used to it?
I don't know if there's any particular tech that we should be throwing at people right now. I really do agree with you, Hugh. Like, I went to a Montessori open-air school in California, and I was really challenged to think about things differently. I had access to computer software from a very early age, and many of my friends did end up as becoming software engineers, things like that, but not all of us had access. So I'm not saying that, because they had access early, they became that. My dad actually, I said I wanted to work for a startup when I was in high school because I saw that Google had a slide. I thought that was pretty cool. And my dad was like, but you're not really involved in any STEM activities. And I was like, one day when I was walking him around Twitter, I was like, look what I built. And so I think that it is really important to encourage people to just think differently and to not always go the normal route. I think that's incredibly an important thing that we should be encouraging people. But if they're showing signs that they love STEM, of course, like we should be putting children in coding boot camps during the summer and have that as an option, and telling parents that it is an option for their children, especially in underserved, lower economic areas. But I think at Twitter, I interviewed thousands and thousands of people, and there wasn't just like one single person that had a specific background that made it in. It was always the people that would be the ones that would seek diverse perspectives that would really pass our interview process. And I think that that's what we should really be encouraging in people.
All right. So quick question to finish off then. As an employer and someone bringing in talent, what's in your head, what does it look like, work look like in, say, 2 to 3 years' time? If you gaze out, if you're in your office or in your garden, what do you see?
Everyone's come back to work, to an office, because they're so bored of being at home. They've discovered this thing called a whiteboard, and they can draw stuff on it and have conversations in hallways. And the Udi business has gone bankrupt. Ugg boots have been banned. JB Hi-Fi, exactly, no more. I think everything is cyclical. Like, I just feel like things will oscillate depending on tech trends, on people trends, on stock markets, on all of it. I don't think it will stay the same. And I think one of the things that I constantly think about with our folks is resilience. Like, how do we just build resilience and how do you cope with change? I know, again, it's a sort of a broad stereotype, but there's two things that I think software developers aren't very good at, and that's change. And I think, well, actually, I'd probably just stick with change. I think the key thing there is that, how do you sort of support folks and say, look, change is coming. It's just an inevitability. It's the new normal. The second thing that developers are terrible at is telling stories. And again, I think it's one of those really innate skills that the good software developers, and you asked me before, Susan, who do I get attracted to at work or who do I go to? It's someone who can tell me a good story as to why this is important or why we need to focus on that. I think that storytelling ability is hugely important, particularly when you're talking about something or you're talking to people or stakeholders that don't necessarily understand the ins and outs of the industry you work in.
Okay. Thank you very much. We could thank our second two panellists.